I've been a hangar tech for 23 years. I can tell you how long a ship has been sitting by the smell of its coolant lines. I can tell you if a hull weld is going to fail before the scanner finds it, just from the way my knuckles feel when I rap against the plating. I'm not bragging. I'm telling you what 23 years of doing the same thing in every dry dock from here to the outer relay stations will earn you if you pay attention. It does not earn you much else, as it turns out. I was on a borrowed billet when the Sesavar died. That's the right word for it. She didn't malfunction, she didn't stall, she died. One moment the flagship of the Voran Admiralty was humming on her moorings, like she always did. That low subsonic thrum you feel in your back teeth, and then it stopped. Just stopped. 3,000 souls on board, all the lights on emergency amber, and the silence where an 800-meter warship used to breathe. I was on the lower maintenance gantry patching a coolant joint on a courier shuttle that had nothing to do with any of this. I heard the silence, and I set down my patch kit, and I looked over at her. The fleet engineers arrived within the hour, 11 of them, in their gray formal coats with the silver piping, rolling carts of diagnostic equipment across the deck. I watched them work from my gantry. They were methodical and precise, and they had tools that cost more than my entire year's billet combined, and by the end of the first day, they had produced 17 competing theories and no results. On the second day, I walked over. The one who stopped me was Commander Thiel, the lead engineer. He was taller than me by a head and a half, pale silver skin, the kind of bearing that comes from being right about things in rooms where everyone agrees with you in advance. He looked at me the way you look at something that has wandered in from the wrong corridor. "Maintenance support is on sub-level 4, he said. "I know where it is," I said. "I've been watching your diagnostic sequence. You're reading the primary ignition bus, but I think the fault is upstream. Have you checked the resonance coupling on the secondary input manifold?" He looked at me for a long moment. "We have the full schematics of this vessel. The secondary manifold is not a fault-prone component." "I didn't say it was fault-prone," I said. "I said it might be where your fault is." He told me very politely that the Fleet Engineering Corps appreciated my concern and that I should return to my assigned work area. So I did. I finished the coolant joint on the courier shuttle. I ate my lunch sitting on the gantry with my legs hanging over the edge, watching the 11 engineers run their sequences again. On the third day, they brought in a 12th engineer and a specialist from the shipyard who had designed 3 of the Voran-class flagships, and he spent 4 hours with his eyes closed and his hand flat against the hull, and at the end of it, he said he had never seen anything like this in 30 years, and he was not sure the ship could be restarted without a full component replacement that would take 6 months. The Admiral arrived that evening. I'd never seen Admiral Voransek in person. The images don't capture the stillness. He walked through the hangar bay like a man who had decided not to be hurried by anything in the universe. Silver-white hair against his pale silver skin, hands clasped at his back, and he stood in front of his flagship and looked at her for a long time without saying a word. The engineers stood at a respectful distance. The Admiral's aide read him a summary of the 3 days' findings. He didn't look at the aide. He kept looking at the ship. I climbed down from my gantry. I don't know exactly what I was thinking. That's the honest answer. I know what I'd been thinking about for 3 days, which is a different thing. 23 years ago, on a backwater atmospheric station, I spent 2 weeks trying to restart a recycler unit that the station's chief engineer said was dead. The station engineer was qualified and confident, and he had the full schematics, and he was wrong. The recycler wasn't dead. It had gone into what the old-timers called a resonance lock, a state where the power draw feedback from the primary bus was actually suppressing the restart signal. It looked like a dead unit because the diagnosis tools were reading the suppression as the fault. The fault was the tool trying to fix it. I'd fixed that recycler by disconnecting the diagnostic feed, waiting for the suppression cycle to decay, and then tapping the housing at the resonance node, the spot where the hull vibration matched the unit's own idle frequency, twice, firmly, in sequence. Like knocking on a door, the unit had come back on like nothing had happened, and the station engineer had stared at me for about 10 seconds before he said anything. I thought about that recycler for 3 days, while I watched 11 engineers tell the Sesavar. What was wrong with her? I walked up to the hull. It's a big ship. Up close, the plating is the size of a wall. I put my left hand flat against it. the way the specialist had done, and I felt for the vibration. There was a faint one, not nothing, just very faint, a tremor about 3 meters to my right. I moved to it. "What are you doing?" That was Commander Thiel. He had seen me cross the deck. "Checking something," I said. "You were asked to return to your work area 3 days ago." "I know," I said. "I'll go back in a minute." I found the node. You can feel it when you're in the right spot. Not a buzz exactly, more like a conversation the hull is having with itself very quietly. I made a fist and I knocked. 2 times. Firm. The sound was a dull thud that went nowhere. Then the Sesavar woke up. It wasn't dramatic. That's always what surprises people who expect the grand moment. It was just the thrum coming back, that subsonic breath filling the deck again, the amber emergency lighting switching over to standard white, and somewhere deep in the ship, a dozen systems cycling on in sequence, like a house waking up in the morning. The diagnostic carts began chiming as their readings changed. One of the engineers said something in his own language that I didn't understand, but the tone was universal. I stepped back from the hull and looked at my knuckles. Then I picked up the lunch bag I'd set down on the deck, and I went back to my gantry, because the courier shuttle's coolant joint still needed a final pressure check, and I was already behind. I was most of the way up the gantry ladder when someone said my name. I looked down. Admiral Vorensek was standing at the base of the ladder. Just him. No aide, no security. He was looking up at me with an expression I've seen on people before, though not often. It's the expression of someone who has just been shown a thing they cannot entirely explain. "Hangar Tech Kell," he said. "Admiral," I said. "What did you do?" I thought about how to explain resonance locks and suppression cycles, and backwater atmospheric recyclers, and 23 years of knocking on things that other people had given up on. Then I thought about the fact that he had probably had a very long 3 days. "I knocked," I said. He was quiet for a moment. "You knocked," he said. "Twice," I said. Firm. At the resonance node. The diagnostic feed was suppressing her restart signal. She needed the feedback loop interrupted, and the resonance cycle confirmed manually. It's an old fix. I learned it on a station that no one's heard of. He looked at me for another long moment. Behind him, the 12 engineers were gathered in a knot, watching. Commander Thiel was standing slightly apart from them. He was not looking at me. He was looking at the ship. "Will you be on this billet when we depart?" the Admiral asked. "No, sir," I said. "I'm here through end of week. Then I go back to the relay station at Karev 9. He nodded, slowly, the way people nod when they are deciding something. "You won't," he said. "I'll have your transfer processed tonight. You'll ship out with the Sesavar. As Senior Hull Systems Technician." He paused. "If that's agreeable to you." I looked at my lunch bag. I looked at the courier shuttle above me. I looked at the Sesavar. 800 meters of her, breathing again in the amber and white light of the hangar bay. I thought about Karev 9, where the recyclers all worked fine, and nobody needed knocking on. "That's agreeable," I said. I finished the pressure check on the courier shuttle first, because I'd said I would, and because a job half done is its own kind of fault. By the time I climbed back down, Commander Thiel was gone. The Admiral was still there, waiting, the way a man waits when he's decided something and is content to be patient about it. I picked up my kit and walked down to meet him,